Julia finally snapping a run of outs.
Snapping a 5-day losing streak for the Aussie market, up by 0.2%. We did see some light volumes, but that was expected, given that we did see both the US as well as the UK on holidays overnight. But I think a key reason why we did see an uptick on our market is the fact that we saw Japan recovering. The Japanese stock market up by 1.2%, and the US futures also moving with that Japanese market. We're seeing the US futures up by 0.4% at the moment. I guess one of the themes that we've really been talking about over the last few weeks has been the fall that we've seen in the Aussie dollar and how domestic investors are laughing if they're invested offshore. And it looks like that trade is continuing, because if we have a look at some of the best performing assets on our market over the last month, some of those have been ETFs. And if we have a look at some of the exchange traded products on our market, we've seen a number of them reaching highs today, even though some of the markets that they deal in have actually pulled back. So if we have a look at some of the ones making highs today, we've seen IEU, which is the iShares S&P Europe 350 fund, IRU, which is the iShares S&P 500 index, which tracks the US, IVV, which is the iShares Russell Mid-Cap Index, which also tracks the US, and IJH, which is the iShares S&P Mid-Cap Index, which tracks mid-cap stocks over in the US. So if we have a look at that fall in the Aussie dollar, it looks like a lot of domestic investors are getting exposure to that lower and forecast falling Aussie dollar through exchange traded products. And that would have been a pretty good strategy over the last month, because we've seen the Australian dollar falling by 6.2%. The four exchange traded products that I mentioned have actually risen by more than 10%, and that's compared to the Australian market, which has actually fallen 2.5% in that past month. So it does look like that's a popular trade at the moment, and that was certainly reflected in terms of volumes and in terms of these exchange traded products reaching 52-week highs. A bit quiet on our market, but we did see some pretty big performances. Mirabilla Nickel, an amazing performance today, up by 25%. No real news coming out of this company, but you know, we've seen moves like this from Mirabilla before. On the 6th of May, we saw it rising 50% with no announcement coming through. So it was a quiet day on our market, but still some pretty big performances coming through. And the Aussie dollar, I guess, a key thing that investors are looking at the moment. And of course, today was a key day because we briefly dipped below 96 US cents before recovering.
Well, today, one stock not doing so well today, Julia, Cabcharge, all seemingly on a Victorian government ruling that saw the stock actually end down 15.3%.
This is the biggest fall ever that we have seen for Cabcharge, and if we have a look at its business, there's really two key threats to its business. First of all is regulatory threat, and secondly competition. And of course we were dealing with the first one today, where we saw the Victorian government coming out and saying that they support Cabcharge fees being dropped 50%, so that would be from 10% down to 50%, and that would be implemented over a 3-year time frame. So if we have a look at Cabcharge, are these fees quite important to its business? Yes, it's a core part of its business. In 2012 we saw revenue at $160 million, and the fees from things like Cabcharge and the machines was about $90 million, so more than 50% there. So it is a key threat that we are seeing in terms of Cabcharge. I guess the other threat is that we have seen third parties utilising machines in taxis. And if you go into taxis these days, a lot of them have two machines, a Cabcharge machine and then a third-party provider. And that's because these third-party providers provide a rebate of up to 4% directly back to the cab drivers. So Cabcharge has been trying to counteract that by offering a 2.2% commission in New South Wales to drivers who process more payments through the Cabcharge machines. But of course, we've also seen recommendations that third-party providers be able to process Cabcharge vouchers as well as Cabcharge cards as well. So that's another area to keep an eye on. Unfortunately, the Victorian government submission today, not good news for the shares, down by a massive 13.3%. And indeed, if we do see this going through, then it is going to have a big impact in terms of Cabcharge's business and earnings.